me that he would die. And then I turned and asked to see the wound which was taking so noble a life. Doctors and nurses tried to dissuade me, but I insisted. The horrors of war are for me to bear as well as others. To me, this wound was a thing holy. Bandages long and blood-stained were removed. And I saw. Oh, this war, this awful, awful war! Hot tears burned down my face. Slowly I leaned over the cot. Now the tears carried the dust and grime of travel from my face and stained the white sheets on which they fell. There in the little hospital, with doctors and nurses and men watching, I took the pallid face of Houghton between my hands and kissed it just below the damp, tangled hair. My boy, you must live. You must live. The first sign of warm, throbbing life came into the dull eyes. With a conscious, elastic effort, he stiffened and brought his hand to his forehead, the nearest he could come to a salute. I leaned over to hear the faint, faint words. I intend to, sir. And he did. But the war continued. It did not look good for the Union. It looked as though the one nation under God would no longer be one nation, but a split nation. It looked so poorly for the Union that in the spring of 1863, the Senate called upon me as president to set aside a national day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer, which I agreed to do. On April 30th, I made this proclamation. It is a due to strengthen and enriched us, and we have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these things are produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to recognize our need for redeeming grace, too proud to pray to the God that made us. In the summer of 1863, the battles of Vicksburg and Gettysburg took place. They're considered to be the turning point of the war. In the Gettysburg battle, there were over 90,000 Northern troops, 75,000 Southern troops involved in that three-day battle, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. In those 3 days, we lost over 50,000 men. I need not remind this group that freedom has a price. Freedom is not free. It never has been. It never will be. We lost more men in the Civil War than the combined total of the Revolutionary Wars, Spanish-American World War of 1812, First World War, Second World War, Korean War up into the Vietnam War. Over 600,000 lives. Freedom is not free. After the Battle of Gettysburg, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Wells, a citizen of Gettysburg, contacted the mayor, who contacted the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. And it was decided that there should be a national cemetery on the battlefield. The first date was set for October 19th. The speaker procured to speak, Mr. Everett, was said, I had not enough time to prepare for such a momentous decision and speech. And so the words as the president, which I agreed to do, and began to prepare immediately. On the 18th, I boarded a special train, traveled down to Gettysburg. That evening there was a reception in Mr. Wells' home. A number of people had come through. I was tired. The war was wearing me down. So I decided to retire early. I went over to the Secretary of State Seward and went over my speech with him just briefly, and then went upstairs where I retired for the night. The next morning, about 10 o'clock, I stepped out onto the porch. A large number of people had gathered. They tell me near 19,000 people had come for that dedication. They brought for me a magnificent chestnut stallion. I mounted, sat tall and straight in the saddle. The band led the way, followed by myself, several other dignitaries, and even officers who had participated in the battle. The crowd parted, cheering and waving as we went out to the dedication area. Now just remember with me, would you please? It had only been 4 months since the battle. They hadn't time to do the proper burial for